Hello again, everyone. Today we can start something new. Basically, how to deal with files. Um, so we'll basically be looking at two classes. The first one is the file class. The file class basically provides a handle on a file. So in our slides, we have UML class diagram of the file class, which is located under java.io, io meaning input output, because obviously you can use files to basically to read from them or to write new data into them. Um, so today I'll show you a sample program that makes use of most of these methods that you can see over here. Uh, these are basically methods that let you check for different properties of a file if you have a file handle. Now there are different types. There are basically primarily two different types of files that we deal with. The first type is called text files. Text files usually contain data in such a way that it is human readable. It is differently encoded. Uh, Data stored as a text file also takes up much more space compared to the second type, which we will not be dealing with here today. The other types of files are called binary files, and the difference is in the way in which information is encoded and written to those files. Nevertheless, today we'll be dealing just with text files. To write to write output to a file, we will need something called a print writer. This is basically the second class that we'll be using today, um, and has a bunch of different methods associated with it. We today will be using just the print method for that takes the string as an argument. As you can see, you can also use a print method together with providing a character or an array or an integer, long, float, different primitive Java data types. We can write those with overloaded versions of the same print method. So we'll be using the print and print line methods that we've been using so far. There's also a scanner object that you can use to read from a file. Now, you've already used the scanner object in a slightly different context to read, to receive read input from the keyboard provided by a user. So the example that I'm going to do today is not going to use a scanner object. It's just primarily to show you what a file object is, and before that I'm going to create a file using the print writer class. Okay, so let's get started here. All right, so here's an empty project, week 9.1, and I begin by um, creating a file handle. So java.io.file, that's the new class that we're going to use, and I'm going to create an object called file. This is the declaration. Now, like for all classes, let me create a file object at the same time. You can see it's the same convention, same notation, and let me in as argument to the constructor of the file class, I'm going to give the name of the file that I'm creating. So let me call this one CCCS121 scores.txt. I can really give it any extension, but because it's going to be a text file, like I said, I'm going to give it the extension txt, and that way the operating system will always know that it will usually try to use a text editor like usually on Windows something like Notepad to open the file. Okay, so that's one. Now, whenever you try to create a file, it's not always the case that that file is actually created. There can be different reasons for that, such as you might be out of memory. So what we do is immediately after that we call the exists method on the file object that we just created. The exists method, as you may remember, is part of the file class that we have over here, exists. And if you check over here, what it does, it returns true if the file or the directory represented by the file object exists. So basically, if the file has been successfully created, the return value will be a true value, a true Boolean value. All right, so that's what we're doing over here. So before going on and assuming anything, we're checking if the file was actually created, and if the file exists, or if the file already exists, system dot out dot print line. That's going to print out a helpful message, something like file already exists. And that'll be the end of this program. There'll be nothing. If there's nothing further to do, we exit with an error, with a code error code of 0. Okay. So let's put in some comments. So we're going to do some file I/O, file output, basically creating an I/O file. And so if the file object has been successfully created, the next thing we want to do is we actually want to write some data into the file, something. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a print writer object, and probably guess what that is going to look like. Print writer. I'm going to call this one file writer, and just for fun I'm going to split up declaration and creation just to show you that I can do it either way. And here I'm doing the actual creation of the object writer. And here's the thing, in order to write to a file, you have to provide the handle of that file over here. So the handle of the file object is the name of the file object is file, lowercase. So this is what I have to give as argument to the print writer constructor. Okay. Now we're basically ready to write data to the file. So I'm going to write some formatted output to the file. And what's that going to look like? So I'm going to use the file writer object that I just created for that. So I'm going to use file writer dot print, and let's say I want to store some scores of different students. So Raid, for example, is one guy, and then maybe could have done this in one line as well. Print line, and let's say the score of Raid is, I don't know, 70. It's going to be Raid space followed by 70, and then a new line character because I'm using the print line method. this can be followed up by another student's name and score. So, for example, Abdulaziz space, and keep it consistent. Let's say on the next line, let's say this guy has a score of 80, and maybe one more. Let's say Ahmed. Ahmed Al Ghamdi. And this guy has a score of 80. Okay, so 3 records that will be written to this file. When we're done, we have to do something else. We have to close the file. And this is done like this. File writer object dot close. Done. File is closed. It's kind of like saving your work at the end. Okay. Now this will, when I try compiling this, this will not work as it is. I have to do something else before it actually runs. I'll show you what. So now that we have created a file, closed it, written some data to it, closed it, let's check some of the file properties for this file, and I'm going to do this to print these out. System.out.print line. I'm going to do a lot of these. Just copy paste this. We had a lot of different methods. So the first one was the does file exist ? And this will be followed up by file dot exists, whatever the return value of the exists method is. Okay. Then there's the file size. The file has space file dot length. This many bytes. So you can check the size. Now you may know some files you may not have access to. Can it be read? ? File dot, and want to check if you're allowed to read this file. You can check that by calling the canRead method on the file object. Just like that. Can it be written ? File dot return value of can write. We can write to the file value, a return value will be true, otherwise false. Now a file object can also point to a directory, not an actual file. Check for that. Is it a directory? And if it is, the return value will be true. Alternatively, if it's not a directory, I guess it will be a file. Check for that. File dot this file. And get the return value of that. Another method to try is it absolute if it is file created using an absolute path name, no, so not get absolute path, is absolute. Okay. What else? Yeah, the file can be hidden. Is it hidden? File dot is hidden. Hmm. And you can also check the location of the full path of the file on your drive by using file.get absolute path, which is the path including the drive, right? And you can also access the date and time it was last modified on file dot last modified, and be helpful. It might not print like that. Turn it out. May have to pass this to a date class object, then print it out. Okay. I think that's about most, if not all the methods that we had. The file class. Just get rid of this. Okay. Run this. File already this. Okay, let me go over here. Delete this. Try this again. Okay, so like I said, this might not work. Okay. Okay, add throws clause. Do that. This will do is it'll add this line up here, throws file not found exception. We'll learn about exceptions hopefully in this course a little later on. Run it again. Does file exist? True. The file has 42 bytes. Can it be read? Yes. Can it be written? Yes. True. Is it a directory? No. False. Is it a file? True. Yes. Is it absolute? False. Is it hidden? False. Absolute path is on my C drive uses my username OneDrive, blah 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 blah, and you can see in my NetBeans projects folder in this project week 9.1 folder CCCS121 scores.txt, and this is the last time it was modified, which is 8:35, which is right now. Let me show you what the file looks like. Okay, so this is the file. Resize this, there you go. That's what's written inside the file. Write 70, new line, Abdul Aziz, 80, new line, Ahmed Al-Ghamdi, 80, new line. Okay, just exactly what we wanted it to say. So let's stop again. Try this out. This was the print writer class. I suggest as an exercise, now that you've created a file, that you know what is in it. Actually, you can create the file any other way. You can create a file using Notepad or use the one that we just made. And try using the scanner class to read from this file, read from a text file. Try that out. Okay, and I'll see you all tomorrow for a hint uh, what tomorrow's task is going to be. Um, it's going to involve taking arguments from the command line and writing to a file. So I guess practice these two things and you'll be all set for tomorrow. See you tomorrow then. Bye.